My name is Carol Wright, and I'm here to talk to you today about writing to a theme for anthologies or contests. A little bit about me. I write mysteries and more. My mysteries include Death in Glenville Falls, a Gracie McIntyre mystery, which was a finalist for 2 International Book Awards. My and more are short stories in a variety of genres found in award-winning anthologies and literary journals. Many of them are collected in A Christmas on Nantucket, my book of short stories. I'm a former professional book editor, attorney, and academic, and founder of the Bethlehem Writers Group. I'm founding executive editor of the Bethlehem Writers Roundtable, our online literary journal, found at bwgwritersroundtable.com. And I coordinate the annual Bethlehem Writers Roundtable Short Story Award competition. You can find out more about me at my website, carolLwright.com. This presentation will cover how to write to a theme, or at least what works for me. Elements of short stories, 9 ways to help stay within word limits, tips for writing for anthologies or contests, submission don'ts, and 2 submission opportunities I'd like you to know about. So, what are the 10 steps for writing to a theme? First of all, don't take an existing story and just insert thematic elements here and there. Start a new story with the theme in mind. Think of the theme as your North Star, the thing you're trying to express in the story, and build from there. But don't write the first thing that comes to mind. Odds are that the first thing that comes to your mind is going to come to the mind of a lot of other people responding to the call for submissions. Give it some time. Think about it. And brainstorm for alternative meanings to the theme. A few years back, I saw a call for submissions for an anthology called Day of the Dark. Day of the Dark was about stories of eclipse. Back in 2017, when you might recall, we had a total eclipse that crossed the North American continent. So, what did I do? First, I played with the words of the theme, doing a little free association. What spin could I get from Day of the Dark? Darkness, of course. Night. Evil. Blindness. Being left in the dark about something appealed to me, so I had a starting point. But I needed to include all the required elements, and one of those was eclipse. So I had to learn more about eclipses, what it would look like, where it would be, when it would be visible. And I knew that before astronomers understood the physics of the event, eclipses were seen as portents of evil or destruction. So that was a good place to start, especially since the call wanted stories to have a mystery element. So I explored other treatments of the theme. Going online, I found many quotations about eclipses, but one that suited me best was from John Milton's Samson Agonistes. Oh, dark, 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 amid the blaze of noon, irrecoverable dark, total eclipse, without all hope of day. That got me going. So I wanted to be open to more possibilities. What ifs are a writer's best friend. So what if there's only one chance to get a picture of something special, but because of the eclipse, there isn't enough light for it to come out? Or what if, like Mark Twain and Halley's Comet, someone is born during a solar eclipse and expects to die during the next one? These ideas feed the imagination. For my story, I went with, what if a husband and wife were keeping each other in the dark about some life-changing information? Kind of piques your curiosity, doesn't it? I hope so. So then I had to figure out my characters. I have a husband and a wife who are not being completely forthcoming with one another. So I needed to figure out how old they are, how long they've been married, Are they happily married? Do they have kids? Where do they live? Where do they work? And of course, what are they keeping from each other? Then comes the fun part, writing the sloppy first draft. I'm what we writers call a pantser, meaning I write from the seat of my pants, rather than following an outline. I love the crazy, messy, imaginative experience of writing a story without really knowing all the twists and turns it might take in advance. It gives me moments of surprise as my characters say or do things I never saw coming. It feels almost collaborative, and it is usually a lot of fun. Then comes the work part. Hone the story, make sure it fits your theme well, and edit. Like many writers, I sometimes find extra words or dangling plot threads or inconsistencies, probably in part because I'm a pantser. And then I go through the whole story several times, hoping to catch all the problems, leaving a smooth, coherent, and interesting story that is within the prescribed word count. Then I get feedback. I take it to my critique group. They pore over it and give me their perspectives on word choices, plot twists, errors, omissions. If I'm hitting a snag, their help is indispensable. I edit, and when it's polished to a shine, I'm ready to submit it. Essential elements of a short story include point of view. I'm assuming you all know what I mean by point of view. You probably also know that most children's books are written in third-person omniscient, while most adult books take a close third-person view from the perspective of the protagonist, or a first-person point of view, again, usually from the perspective of the protagonist. For most short stories, there isn't time to have more than one point of view. So settle on your point of view and try to stick to it. A beginning, a middle, and an end. This might seem a little obvious, but not all short stories have a beginning, a middle, and an end. Some are just sketches of characters or slices of life. And what they actually say is maybe very valuable, but not necessarily good for a themed anthology. So most of us will have stories with the traditional beginning, middle, and end. We want character or characters that we love or cheer for, because without that, without identifying with a character, it's hard to get your reader to continue reading. We want a setting that's told honestly, and by that kind of honesty can apply to a setting that's completely fictional, as well as one that is real. Obviously, if you're setting it in a real place, you want to have your details right. Or a native of that place will know right away you don't know what you're writing about. But if it's a fictional place, you want to have the rules of that world settled in your own mind and explained as much as need be to the reader so that they will understand your setting. Your characters need goals. Now, this can be something they want to avoid, something they hope to achieve. Whatever they are, the character goals are important. Conflict or obstacles are what keep your character from getting those goals. This is true no matter how long your story is. If it's a novel, if it's a short story, even if it's flash fiction, there have to be character goals and conflict to make it a story. Choices. Your character or characters make choices that either get them further toward their goal or further away from their goal. If we care about your character, we care about their choices, and we hope that they make the right ones. A climax. where the character either does or does not ultimately reach their goal, and a resolution after the climax. The resolution is an important element of the story. We want to make sure that the reader leaves the story satisfied that it ended properly. Now, how do we get all that within the word limits? Well, there are a few things that you can think about. First of all, drop your protagonist into trouble immediately. This will hook your readers quickly, and it will help develop your protagonist's character. You just want it to be enough for the readers to care. Remember that short stories usually contain only one story arc because there's just no time for subplots. You're following your character through the search for their goal and to the ultimate resolution. You want to limit your number of characters. Short stories are usually about one main character, and all secondary characters should do double duty and be vital to the story, that is, move the story forward. If they don't, they shouldn't be there. But then I have a friend who says, don't name the furniture. There might be people in your story who are not characters, such as the barista who hands you the coffee, or the firefighter who rescues the cat in the tree. These people might be helping to move the story along, but they are not necessarily characters in the story who have backstory and wants and goals of their own. Only the characters need names. You can imply or hint at backstory, but you don't need to go into a long discourse about what happened before, why this person feels that way, how this wound happened. You can just hint at it or imply it. We need to know if two characters have a history of conflict, but we don't need to know the details of that conflict. You might need to know it as a writer, but the reader doesn't need it all spelled out for them. Write tight, especially descriptions and settings. You want to make sure that you get just enough, but not too much. You don't want to wax eloquent about the shape of the leaf on the tree as it falls to the grass. That's not the kind of story we're writing for an anthology. Use contractions or compound words. Now, this is actually kind of a trick. Contractions make two words into one. Do not is don't. You've saved a word. Compound words. Instead of school teacher as two words, use school teacher as one word. It's grammatically correct and reduces your writing by one word. And hyphenated words, if you're using Microsoft Word, hyphenated words are counted as one word. But beware, some word counters will count them as two words. One other thing, simplify your verbs. She left instead of she took her leave or she has left. You could even have a one word sentence, gone. Oh, back on number 6. One thing I do want to mention, besides hyphenated words, never use ellipses. Each dot is counted as a word in Microsoft Word. Also use vivid verbs to eliminate the need for adverbs, phrases, or adjectives to show emotion or action. A vivid verb is going to be like, the storm raged instead of the storm blew in like a typhoon. Save a lot of words that way. Now, some tips for writing for anthologies and contests. Use a standard file format for submission, usually a doc or docx, unless otherwise specified. I really should emphasize, unless otherwise specified. Believe me, if you when in doubt, go to the submission requirements and follow what they say. Make sure your submission is error-free. I should have put error-free in quotation marks because nothing can be guaranteed to be error-free, especially because you get conflicting advice from different style manuals, but make it as close to error-free as you can. Use as many words as you need and not one word more. I think this was Elmore Leonard's recommendation, and it certainly is true for short story writers. For a short story, say you have a call for submissions that has a maximum of 3,500 words. That's not a goal. It's a maximum. You want to use all the words you need, but not one word more. Meaning, if your story ends at 2,800 words, stop writing. Don't feel you need to pad it to make it 3,500 words. By the same token, if your short story contest or anthology says 5,000 words, submitting a story of 500 words is probably not going to be competitive. So you might want to rethink those flash fiction stories when submitting to a short story contest or anthology. Be creative with your title. When people write to a theme, the temptation is to use the words of the theme in the title. And when that happens, they receive a lot of stories with very similar titles. It's very hard, therefore, for when discussing stories with the editors to determine, wait a minute, which one do you mean? Which one is that? If you have a more creative title, that's unlikely to happen, and it will actually help your story stand out a bit. Avoid common devices that aren't as original as you might think. This is something that you don't realize until you actually are reading for a contest or for an anthology. A lot of people go for the death of a family member, or we had an anthology, a contest that asked for animal stories, and I can't tell you how many dead dog stories we got. It got to the point where nobody wanted to read another story about a dog that died. Death is a part of life, and it certainly is not something fiction writers should avoid talking about, but it's hard to stand out when you're using a very common device. And so think beyond those as you're devising your story. Remember that endings are very important. You want your reader to come away from your story feeling satisfied that things were tidied up at the end and that what happened was resolved. Now here's some submission etiquette. It's actually several don'ts, what not to do when you're submitting for a contest or an anthology. Don't flatter the judges or editors in a cover letter. They know you're just buttering them up and trying to make yourself seem like a really likable person, which you undoubtedly are. But what's going to matter is what's in the story, not what's in the cover letter. So don't run the risk of putting them off by thinking that you're trying to compensate for something by buttering them up in the cover letter. Don't email the contest runners or the anthology editors with questions that are answered on the call for submissions. It's really annoying. And the submission requirements have been carefully written, and they are there to answer your questions. So if you have a question, do not go to the editor or contest runner. Go to the call for submissions and see if the answer is there. If it's not there, then you can ask your questions. But 9 times out of 10, you'll find that the answer is there. Don't argue with the rules. The problem that some people have is that they think that rules don't apply to them, and therefore they should be allowed to set their own rules. And that's not the way contests or anthologies work. Don't break the rules either. And don't ask for exceptions to the rules. Unfortunately, if you get an exception to the rule, it practically invalidates the contest. And realistically, for a contest especially, you have to follow your own rules. Don't complain that the accepted stories are not as good as yours. You might sincerely believe that, but every reader is subjective. You're subjective when reading your own work, and every reader who reads stories for an anthology or a contest brings their own subjectivity to that reading. If it's what the judges have decided is good, that's what goes into the book. If the judges, however erroneously, might think that your story is not as good, that unfortunately means that your story will not be published. Complaining about it only makes them think, I don't think I want to deal with this person in the future. And this one gets you on a blacklist. Don't demand to see all the accepted stories so you can show them how yours is better than the ones they've chosen. Once the contest judging or the anthology selection is over, really, they are not going to reopen it. So don't try. And worst of all, don't demand to get the names and addresses of the judges who evaluated your story. That has happened, and it should never happen. Now, those 2 submission opportunities I told you about are with the Bethlehem Writers Roundtable and the Bethlehem Writers Short Story Award competition. Bethlehem Writers Roundtable is a paying literary journal. $50 is paid for every featured story of up to 2,500 words, $20 for an and more story, which is a non-featured short story, and $10 for poems. It's a quarterly publication with themed issues, and it has a limited submission window, and that's all listed on the website. So you can see the submission guidelines, which should answer most or all of your questions, at bwgwritersroundtable.com. And then the Bethlehem Writers Short Story Award. It's an annual competition since 2012, and we're seeking short stories of 2,000 words or fewer. The first, second, and third place winners receive cash and publication. First place receives $250 and publication in an upcoming anthology. In this case, it is a Seasons Readings, Sweet, Funny, and Strange Holiday Tales. Then the second place receives a $100 and publication in Bethlehem Writers Roundtable. Third place receives $50 and publication in Bethlehem Writers Roundtable. And honorable mentions may be offered publication in Bethlehem Writers Roundtable. It's open from January 1 to March 31 every year. This deadline of March 31 can be extended, has been extended in some cases. And one thing that you might want to think about when you see that a contest has been extended, it means that they haven't received as many stories as they anticipated. So it might mean that your competition is less keen, and it's a good time to polish up a story and send it in. It's a themed competition, as I said. 2023 and 2024 competitions will be on the winter holiday stories theme. That includes any holidays from US Thanksgiving, not Canadian, sorry, through New Year's Day. And it's for the anthology Seasons Readings, More Sweet, Funny, and Strange Holiday Tales. Now in 2024 and 2025, the competition theme is tentatively speculative fiction. We don't have a title for that anthology yet, but when we do, we'll put it on the website. There is a $15 entry fee, and you can see the submission information at bwgwritersroundtable.com/short-story-award-2/. So I hope to be reading your stories either for Bethlehem Writers Roundtable or for the Short Story Award in the near future. So good luck and happy writing.